The lights of the studio gleamed brilliantly, bouncing off the polished wood of the set. Cameras panned across the crowd, capturing the buzz of anticipation. Tonight's episode was supposed to be fiery, but no one expected the sparks that would soon fly between two of the most outspoken women in American politics. Karoline Leavitt, a young conservative spokesperson, sat on one end of the stage, her posture firm, her chin lifted in confidence. Across from her sat Congresswoman Jasmine Crockett, a Democrat with a reputation for razor-sharp comebacks and an unshakable presence. The topic of the night was already polarizing: government overreach and the role of free speech in American society. The moderator, a seasoned host named Daniel Reeves, smiled at the cameras. "Good evening, ladies and gentlemen. Tonight, we have two powerful voices joining us. On my left, Karoline Leavitt. On my right, Representative Jasmine Crockett. We're diving into questions of accountability, democracy, and the future of our nation. Let's begin." A respectful round of applause filled the studio before Daniel gestured toward Karoline. "Karoline, many Americans feel that free speech is being stifled, especially on college campuses and social media. What's your take?" Karoline leaned forward, her hands folded together as she spoke with rehearsed conviction. "Daniel, it's undeniable that free speech is under attack. Conservative voices are silenced every single day. Students are shouted down for expressing opinions that don't align with the left's agenda. And frankly, people like Representative Crockett are enabling this culture of censorship." Gasps rippled through the audience. Karoline's words had already set the tone: direct, confrontational, unapologetic. Jasmine Crockett didn't flinch. Instead, she leaned back in her chair, an amused smile tugging at her lips. "Karoline, let's not pretend that free speech only belongs to one side. What you call censorship, I call accountability. If someone spreads lies or harmful rhetoric, they're going to get pushback. That's democracy in action. And let me be very clear, no one is silencing conservatives. Some people just don't like being challenged." The audience clapped loudly, many nodding in agreement. Karoline's face tightened. She shot back, her voice rising slightly. "Challenged. That's what you call it when students are chased off campuses, when speakers are threatened, when people lose their jobs simply for holding an unpopular opinion. That's not accountability, Congresswoman, that's tyranny." Daniel raised his hands, sensing the tension, but Jasmine was already leaning forward, her tone calm but cutting. "What you're describing, Karoline, is people facing consequences for their words. Free speech doesn't mean freedom from responsibility. If you say something harmful, you're going to get a response. And let me tell you, trying to paint yourself as a victim while holding a national platform is laughable." The audience erupted with laughter and applause. Karoline's jaw tightened further, her cheeks flushed with color. She opened her mouth again, but Jasmine wasn't finished. "Young lady, you're mistaking disagreement for oppression. And frankly, if you think a few angry tweets count as silencing, maybe politics isn't for you." The remark drew another round of applause. Karoline slammed her hand lightly against the table. "Excuse me, Representative Crockett, but you will not patronize me. I am here because millions of Americans feel exactly what I'm saying. They're tired of being told to shut up, and they're tired of people like you pretending their voices don't matter." The audience murmured, a mixture of agreement and discomfort. Daniel stepped in quickly. "Ladies, let's." But Karoline wasn't waiting for him. She turned sharply toward Jasmine, her voice cutting through the noise. "Sit down," Karoline shouted, pointing a finger as if she had the authority to command her opponent. The studio went silent. Gasps echoed across the room. For a moment, it felt as if the air itself had frozen. Jasmine Crockett didn't move. She didn't blink. She simply sat there, her expression a portrait of calm strength. Slowly, she leaned forward, resting her elbows on the table, and spoke in a voice that carried more weight than Karoline's outburst ever could. "Karoline, I am sitting down. And let me educate you on something. You don't get to talk to me like I'm a child you can order around. I am an elected member of Congress, chosen by the people to represent them. You shouting at me doesn't make you powerful. It makes you small." The crowd erupted, cheers, claps, even a few whistles. Karoline's eyes widened. Her lips parted as if to respond, but no words came. She glanced at Daniel, as though looking for backup, but the host kept his hands folded, giving her the floor to recover, or collapse. Congresswoman Crockett, Daniel said gently, would you like to continue? Jasmine nodded gracefully, her gaze still fixed on Karoline. Absolutely. Because what just happened here is exactly the problem. Karoline thinks she can shout at me, disrespect me, and dismiss me, and somehow that's supposed to prove her point. But all it proves is that when the arguments run out, the shouting begins. And frankly, Daniel, the American people deserve better. The crowd roared with approval. Karoline shifted uncomfortably in her seat, trying to compose herself. Her rehearsed talking points seemed to evaporate in the heat of the moment. She straightened her blazer and forced a smile, but her voice betrayed a quiver. What I meant was, look, I'm passionate. And maybe I came across too strong, but... Jasmine leaned back, folding her arms, eyes never leaving Karoline. The silence stretched, and the young conservative's stammering attempt to recover only made the tension more unbearable. One audience member shouted from the back, she told you to sit down, but she's the one standing embarrassed now. Laughter swept through the room. Karoline's composure cracked. She glanced nervously toward the exit, then back at the cameras. She could feel the humiliation mounting, every eye locked on her, waiting to see what she would do next. Daniel tried once more to salvage the show. Ladies, perhaps we should take a moment to reset and focus on the issues at hand. Let's talk policy rather than personalities. But Karoline's silence spoke louder than words. She could no longer meet Jasmine's gaze. The sting of her own outburst, echoing in her ears, replaying in her mind, had broken her momentum. The segment continued, but the balance had shifted. Jasmine answered questions with confidence, her words sharp and eloquent. Karoline fumbled, tripping over her responses, her earlier energy drained. Every so often, the cameras caught her glancing down, her hands fidgeting in her lap. And the audience knew, this was only the beginning of her unraveling. The studio break was short, only a few minutes, but it felt like an eternity for Karoline. She sat stiffly in her chair, sipping water, trying to regain composure. The crew bustled around, checking microphones and repositioning cameras. Meanwhile, Jasmine Crockett leaned casually back in her seat, scrolling through her phone, calm as ever. The contrast couldn't have been sharper. One woman rattled, the other completely unbothered. When the cameras rolled again, Daniel Reeves, ever the professional, smiled into the lens. Welcome back, everyone. Before the break, things got spirited. Now, let's turn to another pressing issue. Trust in government institutions. He gestured toward Karoline. Karoline, many Americans, particularly conservatives, feel institutions like the Department of Justice and FBI have lost credibility. What's your perspective? Karoline straightened, grateful for the pivot. Thank you, Daniel. Yes, millions of Americans see a double standard. When conservatives speak up, they're investigated, targeted, and punished. Meanwhile, Democrats seem to get away with everything. It's corruption, plain and simple. And it's white people like Representative Crockett, who defend this, are part of the problem. Jasmine raised an eyebrow but didn't interrupt. Karoline, sensing a bit of momentum, leaned forward. If Americans can't trust their own government, how can we function as a nation? People are losing faith, and it's because the so-called leaders sitting across from me keep making excuses. She finished with a sharp glare in Jasmine's direction, expecting applause. Instead, the audience gave only a few hesitant claps. Daniel turned to Jasmine. Your response? Jasmine sat upright now, her tone firm. Karoline, once again, you're oversimplifying a complex issue. Yes, institutions have made mistakes, but to suggest there's some grand conspiracy against conservatives is not only misleading, it's dangerous. You can't go on national television spreading fear without evidence. Karoline opened her mouth, but Jasmine pressed on, her voice gathering strength. And another thing, don't try to use me as your punching bag. The American people elected me because I fight for them, not because I peddle conspiracy theories. If you're going to call me part of the problem, then I'll say this: the real problem is people who think yelling and finger pointing is leadership. That's not leadership, it's noise. The audience burst into applause, louder this time, echoing across the studio walls. Karoline's nostrils flared. She had prepared for tough questions, yes, but she hadn't expected Jasmine's words to cut so deep and resonate so strongly with the crowd. You think you can just dismiss me with your rehearsed lines? Karoline snapped. You're not the only one who represents the people. I represent the millions who are fed up, who are sick of being treated like second-class citizens just for speaking the truth. Jasmine tilted her head, her expression calm but firm. No, Karoline. You represent anger without direction. Passion without responsibility. And that's why, when you shouted, "Sit down," at me earlier, you revealed exactly what you stand for, shouting over people rather than listening to them. The words hit like a hammer. The crowd erupted again, clapping, cheering, some even standing. Daniel tried to mediate. All right, let's keep this civil, please. But Karoline was unraveling. Civil, she repeated, her voice rising. How is it civil to be mocked on live television? To be laughed at for standing up for my beliefs? This is a setup. This whole show is biased. Her voice cracked on the last word. The audience reacted with a mixture of gasps and laughter. Jasmine leaned forward, her voice low but audible enough for every microphone to capture. Karoline, no one needed to set you up. You did that all by yourself. The crowd exploded, cheers, whistles, even some people chanting Jasmine's name. Cameras zoomed in on her composed smile, then cut to Karoline's red, trembling face. Karoline slammed her hands on the table. I don't have to take this. I will not be disrespected. Daniel's eyes widened. Karoline, please, let's finish the discussion. But Karoline was already unhooking her microphone. She yanked it off her blazer, the wires tangling awkwardly as she stood. The audience booed and laughed in equal measure. Jasmine remained seated, watching calmly as if the entire moment had been inevitable. There she goes, she murmured, her words caught by the still hot mic. The cameras followed Karoline as she stormed toward the exit. Her heels clicked loudly against the stage floor, but the sound was drowned by the audience's reaction. Some clapped, some laughed, others shook their heads. Just as Karoline reached the stage door, someone in the crowd shouted, "Who's sitting down now?" The studio erupted. Laughter, cheers, applause, it rolled like a wave, drowning out everything else. Karoline froze for half a second, her shoulders stiff, before pushing the door open and vanishing backstage. The cameras cut back to Daniel, who looked both flustered and amused. Well, that was unexpected. But the show must go on. He turned to Jasmine. Congresswoman, would you care to offer closing remarks? Jasmine smiled, her poise unshaken. Yes, Daniel. What happened here tonight is bigger than two women arguing. It's about how we engage with one another as Americans. We don't move forward by shouting each other down. We move forward by listening, by debating with respect, and by standing firm in truth. If anyone takes something from this, I hope it's that leadership isn't about volume, it's about vision. The audience rose to their feet, giving her a standing ovation. Jasmine Crockett sat quietly, letting the applause wash over her, her expression calm and confident. Backstage, meanwhile, Karoline collapsed into a chair, her hands trembling. Staffers tried to console her, but she brushed them off. She stared at the floor, replaying the moment in her mind, the shout, the silence, Jasmine's calm response, and the humiliation of walking out in defeat. No matter how many interviews she would do in the future, no matter how passionately she would try to defend herself, that clip would follow her forever. Karoline Leavitt shouting, "Sit down." Only to be silenced, not by force, but by the strength of a woman who refused to bow. And for millions of viewers across the nation, the lesson was crystal clear: sometimes the loudest voice in the room is also the weakest.